Hi guys. Well, here we are in August. It's the last Sunday of the summer. Hard to believe, isn't it? And we've been in Proverbs all summer long. We were supposed to have spent the last 2 weeks in the book of Song of Solomon, but I just decided to stay in Proverbs a little longer. But I am going to finish it up this week with one lesson on relationships from the Song of Solomon. We've only got 2 verses we're going to look at, but I think that maybe the discussion that comes out of them, and it won't be discussion on the video, but the discussion maybe that comes at home would be the most important part of the lesson. So I want to start not with scripture, but I want to start from a book that I've been reading. When I like to read a lot, and when I find an author that I like, I tend to read just about everything they wrote. And the most recent author that I've kind of hooked on to is Lisa Wingate. And she's a Christian author, and a whole lot of her books deal with relationships. And this particular excerpt from this book comes from a father speaking to 2 adult daughters who have been estranged from him for some time, and what went wrong. And this is what he said. I don't know any better way to explain things. A great deal of your life just happens to you. It isn't a conscious decision at the time, and you end up somewhere you never planned to be. You may feel as if your mother and I did not love you enough. Please don't let that guide your lives. That is not reality. We loved you as much as you love your son, Kate. In hindsight, I can see that perhaps we let other things seem more important, but that was not the truth. Okay, now set aside for a second that scene from Wingate's book, and I want you to think of a real person. Dr. Christian Barnard, most of you would remember him as the guy with the first heart transplant, involved in all of that stuff. And this comes from a book that he wrote called One Life. It was a bright April morning when I drove out of Minneapolis. It seemed like a century since I first arrived there, a time longer than all the years before it. In New York, I put the car on a boat and I caught a plane to Cape Town. Northwest winds were blowing and we came over the city with the waves close below. My wife was there with the children. I had not written much for 2 months and I was unprepared for her greeting. Why did you come back? She said. There was no longer a smile in her eyes. Oh God, I thought, have I made the most terrible mistake in my life? Don't look so surprised, she said. We gave you up. We decided you were never coming back. I replied, but it was only a little delay. I wrote you April 1st. No, you wrote once saying you weren't coming home. We were building valves, aortic heart valves, I answered. No, you were building a family. That is, you were, until you dumped it in my lap, she said bitterly. Wow. Neither the Barnards nor Kate's dad expected to end up where they were. They were both doing important things that seemed more important at the time. And yeah, aortic heart valves have certainly been important. But what did they give away to get there? You know, Kate's dad put it this way. I can see that perhaps we let other things seem more important. But what? But that was not the truth. Now, in the book of Solomon, Song of Solomon, there's a verse that kind of deals with that. And when you first read it, it doesn't necessarily make you think, whoa, what's this got to do with that? And yet it has everything to do with that. And this is what it says. In chapter 2, verse 15, catch the foxes for us, the little foxes that are ruining the vineyards, while our vineyards are in bloom. You know, little foxes have a way of digging in. Now, I've never had a fox. You've never had a fox. The only foxes I've ever seen are either in the zoo or in a Robin Hood Disney cartoon kind of thing. Not real familiar with foxes. But from doing a little reading about foxes, they will burrow in and they will eat at the roots of the things that are above them. And you never even know they're down there until everything up above starts dying. And they are a little pack of them when they're a litter, the little foxes. As they get older, they scatter, they're bigger. They don't live in packs when they're older, but they do when they're little. And that's when they're nibbling on those roots in the vineyard. And up above, everything looks great until all of a sudden, whoosh, it is dead, just dead. And so what Solomon's beloved is saying here is the little foxes can go unnoticed until they've destroyed things. And when she says when our vineyards are in bloom, she's speaking of their relationship. Let's deal with the little things before they become big things, before they destroy what we have. She's not talking about a fox hunt. This is not tally-ho kind of English thing. This is not underestimating the power of little things to undermine something. You know, we have a tendency to let little things go. But if you let a little termite go, he's going to invite a whole lot of friends over. And before long, your whole house is a mess. And it's the same way with our homes, not the houses that we build, but the homes, the relationships, what we truly live in become. We let those little things go, and it becomes a mess. So what are some of the little foxes that are common that can mess up relationships and someday present big problems? Well, one of them is inattention. We get our focus off on other things. That's what happened in the Bernards, and yes, that did end in a divorce. That's what happened with Kate's father's family. And although there are 5 books in that series, and although there is some mending, that relationship is never truly healed, never completely healed. So inattention can do big inroads into messing things up. It's not a conscious decision. Kate's dad said that. Great deal of your life just happens to you. It isn't a conscious decision at the time, and you end up somewhere you didn't plan to be. Now, there have been times in my life when I've made very, very conscious decisions about some things that are relationship related. Had a calendar where every day of the month was a different character quality that I wanted to pray into my children. Responsibility, kindness, honesty, things like that. We had a calendar like that at FBCA, and our teachers used it at one time to pray for the children in their classes. Some may still do that, but we haven't publicized it lately. We've got it on a bulletin board in the faculty lounge, but I don't know if anybody even looks at it. I have on my desk 9 qualities of the fruit of the Spirit. I can shuffle them, and every day a different one comes up to remind myself that this is a quality that I want to develop in my life. I want to see God use in my life. I want to see grow in my life. Honestly, it's been sitting on kindness for a while. I haven't shuffled that deck in quite a while. I'll see kindness and I'll think, well, are you being kind today? But what about the other qualities? Am I even thinking about them? Without a conscious plan, a conscious thought, we drift. We just drift. And so we need to make sure that we're paying attention to our relationships. Now, Solomon and his beloved here are speaking of a romantic relationship. And yeah, that requires attention. But there are other relationships that do as well. Relationships with sisters and brothers. relationships with grandmas, relationships with in-laws, relationships with children. Relationships can die on the vine from little foxes if we don't pay attention. Okay, another thing is taking each other for granted, just assuming that, hey, I can always take care of that tomorrow, can always say I love you tomorrow. Well, that's not a good plan. Sometimes we need to take time to show appreciation. Just say we recognize in you qualities that we admire. We recognize in you qualities that we treasure. We recognize in you things that you do that add to our lives. Show some appreciation. Don't take people for granted. A third little fox that can cause a whole lot of trouble is not talking about important things. Yeah, the bills are important, and there's sometimes that we do have to talk about stopped up plumbing and things like that. But are we talking about dreams? Are we talking about feelings? Are we talking about goals or plans? Or why we want to pay those bills? Because what will come after that if we do? Are we planning together? Or are we just going through the motions day by day? We need to talk about important things. And fourth is distrust. Now, I'm not talking about not trusting your spouse in the sense that you think they're going to be cheating on you. Not that kind of distrust. But more of a, are you really pulling for me? Do I know that you're always looking out for my best interest? Or do I just hear critical things? Maybe even when you're not being critical, but that's what I hear. Are we trusting each other and that we can believe what we say to each other is meant for good and not as a dig? We need to be careful that what we say isn't seen as fault finding. We can build distrust in our own marriage if we do that. Okay, the second verse that I want us to look at kind of goes with what I call the title of this thing's foxes, and we've talked about that, and now friends, the other half of it. And this comes from Song of Solomon, chapter 5, verse 16. His mouth is full of sweetness, and he is wholly desirable. This is my beloved, and this is my friend. Now, marriage is a whole lot more fun when you like your spouse, when you enjoy spending time with them. You know, people say the family that prays together stays together. Well, yeah, that's true. But I think the family that plays together stays together too. When you got married, you were looking for someone to share your life with. The good times, the bad times. You want to share the funny things with them. You want to share yourself with them. It's not healthy for you to spend the best part of your day, and I'm not talking about hours, but the best part of your day, the best part of your life with someone other than your spouse. The most enjoyable part of your life should be the time that you spend with them. And your goal in marrying was not, how happy can you make me? At least it shouldn't have been. What you promised was that you were looking to serve them. When she's talking about his mouth is sweet, she's not talking about his breath. She's not saying, oh, he just had a peppermint or an Altoid. No, she's talking about the things that he says, the way that he shares himself with her. He is wholly desirable. She wants to hear what he thinks and who he is. He shares that with her. Now think for a minute about a pitcher of water and a lemon. You can dump that lemon in that pitcher of water and you will never have lemonade. Now what has to happen is you got to cut that lemon, you got to squeeze that lemon, and you got to stir that water. And that's what becomes the lemonade. Now maybe you're the lemon in this relationship, maybe you're the water, but it's got to get stirred up together to make lemonade. And the only way you're going to do that is to share who you are and to make plans together, to work together, to become something sweet together. Um, his desire says he is wholly desirable. She wants to know him, and his words show that he has a desire for her. Not just a, hey baby kind of desire, but a you. I want you. Now, I don't know if Rick could say my mouth is always full of sweetness. In fact, I'm sure he'd say it's not. But it ought to be. What about yours? What about yours? Do you say things that you wouldn't say, at least in the way that you said them, if other people were around? Are you more lively? Do you talk more when other people are there than you are anxious to share your day and not just your complaints with your spouse? Little foxes. And are you friends? Both of those things are important if your relationship is going to become all you want it to be. So here's the homework, and here's the harder part of the lesson. List 3 foxes that you think might be burrowing in your vineyard right now, and talk with your spouse about how to drive them out. And if the relationship that's whatever is not one with your spouse, it might be you need to have that relationship talk about foxes with whoever it is. Your child, your grandma, your sister, whoever. Second, list 10 things that you admire about this person, your spouse or your sister or you, whoever it is. 10 things you admire about them. And then tell them. And then finally, consider some things that maybe you think your spouse doesn't know about you, about your dreams or your hurts or your desires or whatever. 2 things you think maybe this person doesn't know about you, but you'd like to share. And share that with them. Don't let little foxes destroy your love while it's in bloom. Don't let little foxes kill your vineyard without you seeing what's happening. Don't turn your eyes off looking at something else while life just happens. And remember that your mouth should be full of sweetness. Your desire should be for them, for your spouse. And remember, they should be your friend. I hope you have a good conversation this afternoon. And I'm looking forward to seeing you soon. Bye-bye.